Hi, College and Career Success. We are now in week 5 of our summer semester, which means you are officially halfway done with the course and that much closer to being able to enjoy just a little bit more of your summer. So this video is, as I mentioned, for week 5. I did want to point out just real quickly, if you have not had a chance already, I opened up along with the week 4 video and the week 4 folder your final project steps 1 and 2. I will soon be also adding steps 3 and 4. I'll probably just keep those together so that you can kind of look at those. They're usually a little bit shorter, but they go over just the final project so that you can focus on that, which is due in week 8 of the semester. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get into week 5. Chapter 4, which is about soft skills, sometimes known as like non-technical skills or transferable skills. So we're going to talk about those, and you can see the assignments that we'll be working on. So the first thing is I'm going to go over the PowerPoint for Chapter 4. Again, talks about soft skills. I'm going to go through the study, which again in your textbook you are always welcome to look at more in depth, but for our purposes I just kind of go right to the content of the chapter here. So first off, what are soft skills? Well, soft skills, again, sometimes called transferable skills, are those things that are not necessarily taught explicitly most often. Now, you might see workshops or opportunities that you can freshen them up or brush up on them or help develop them, but oftentimes it's life experience or maybe things that have been instilled along the way in other courses. So things like time management, critical thinking, decision making, organization, those kind of things. You have your technical skills, which all of you are, working toward in your particular field. The skills, the duties, responsibilities, tasks that someone in IT, someone in nursing, someone in education will learn. And then you have the soft skills. Your technical skills will get you a job because you have to know your stuff, right? But it's your soft skills that are going to help you sustain that job, maybe help you rise up through the ranks, because if you know your technical skills, but you're horrible at being professional and managing your time and organizing, you may not make it long. So that's why it's really important. So our textbook does talk about, what is professionalism? And of course, it's going to look a little different based on the career, because there are certain expectations of what a professional is and looks like and behaves in different areas. But in general, a lot of people can kind of agree that a professional is someone who works pretty hard, they're respectful, they work as a team, they're honest, they're committed to achieving maybe individual as well as collective goals. So that kind of lends itself to making sure that you're a professional in your emails. There's a little section on here about professional emails and how, like the hows and the hows to not, I guess. There are many times where I get emails from students that the spelling, the punctuation, the grammar, and just the content is really either unprofessional or it's not polished. And, right now, my only way that I'm interacting with just about all of you is through email. And so that's, for better or worse, the only way I have to kind of form a picture of you. Same thing as if when you send in a resume, unless that employer has already met you, the resume or the cover letter is the first thing they get to see about you. If you have a lot of misspellings, or if you're using like texting language, which is what I see most often, then it's not going to come across very professional, and they may just toss your resume aside. So it's really important to just know what a professional looking email and just professionalism online in general looks like. Our text chapter also talks about time management, which I know a lot of people tend to struggle with. So when you think about your time management, things to ask yourself are, am I using my time that's a way that matches with your goals? So if your goal, for instance, was to get a 4.0, this summer semester, but you're spending all your time and energy and effort binging Netflix or playing video games or napping, which all of that is okay in moderation, then obviously if you're doing it too much, the way you're spending your time is not consistent with your goals. So you want to look to see, do you have a good school work-life balance? They typically say, and by they, I mean the research conducted in our chapter, between 19 and 20 hours is actually a good work balance. Now, they're not going to say that it's going to obviously be for everyone, because everyone's situations are different. But there was a study done that says, students who work more than that are overworking themselves. And students who don't work at all or less than that actually procrastinate longer because they think they have more time. So around 19 to 20 hours is like the ideal amount of hours to work if you're also going to school. Now, everyone can have their own circumstances. So that's not to say, oh my gosh, I work 40 hours a week, I can't succeed, or I don't work, I can't succeed. That's not what that means. It just means that you have to know kind of your balance. So if you are working 40 hours a week, make sure that you're able to still get your schoolwork in and your other responsibilities so that you have that balance. Look and see how you plan and engage your time, and then where are those gaps, those time traps that you could use your time better. So again, looking and asking yourself, and what am I doing helping me reach my goals? If you are finding you have issues with time management, think about your time traps. So maybe Netflix is a time trap for you. You sit down to watch one episode of something and it turns into 6 episodes. That's a time trap. Maybe a time trap is when you are just on your phone and you just spend an insane amount of time scrolling on your phone. So maybe you just have to first be aware of the time traps. Give yourself some time limits. I'm going to watch 1 episode, or I'm going to nap for half an hour, whatever the case is. And then use those activities as rewards. Like, okay, if I get my paper done, then I can allow myself to have, half hour screen time or whatever that might be. So, and this kind of, again, relates back to that work-life school balance I mentioned, where they say 19 to 20 hours is usually ideal to help you find a nice balance. Procrastination, many of you have mentioned before, and a lot of my students talk about how procrastination is a problem. So if you have a large task, let's say a research paper, and it's due 2 months from now, well, procrastinators would typically wait until like a couple days before, which is not great with a research paper. So you want to take it and break it down into manageable tasks. So maybe as soon as you get the paper, day 1 or 2, you find your topic. Day 3 and 4, you start getting sources. Day 5 and 6, you start working on an outline. Like every couple days, do another task so it's not all left at once, and then reward yourself for taking those actions. Another thing our chapter does talk about, and I like doing this activity when I typically have students in person, is this multitasking. There are studies that actually say that it used to be like, oh, multitasking is great. And now I'm not talking about multitasking like you're making dinner and you're also watching TV. That's just normal human multitasking. This is more like academic or professional tasking, when you're trying to do 2 or more things that have to do with your academics or professional. So there's been a lot of research that actually says that when you multitask, it actually takes you longer, you don't enjoy the tasks, and it actually reduces your productivity and the quality. So if you single task, you're actually going to get your tasks done more quickly, and your products are going to be highly more effective and higher quality. So there's another little study that talked about multitasking during class, and it basically went through and said, they had these groups of people where some of them were like on their phone and some of them were single tasking. Those students who are distracted by their phone, even if they weren't necessarily the ones using it, maybe they heard it go off, maybe they saw someone using it, that negatively impacts their overall performance. And if you're near someone on campus, there's tons of computer labs. And so maybe you're sitting behind someone and in front of you, they're on a different site, they're browsing. Even doing that, like seeing someone else multitask, can negatively impact you. So multitasking can not only negatively impact yourself, it could also impact those around you. And so you just want to be aware of that. So you want to single task it, take away distractions, give all your attention to what you're currently working on. I know one thing I always have to do if I'm going to work on something, all of a sudden 15 other things pop in my head, like, well, what about this and this? Write those down right when you're thinking of them, and then focus on the task at hand and then move down your list. All right, and then our chapter starts talking about interpersonal skills and the importance of communication, and how communication is not just talking, it's also that active listening, nonverbal communication, meaning eye contact, body language, how important it is to have an open mind and empathy and respect, which if any of you have spent any time on social media in these last several months with everything going on in our society, our country, and the world, I know what I'm finding anyway is that there's not many people who are open-minded or who have a lot of respect when there's disagreements. And so I think if we really do approach communication with that empathy and friendliness and open-mindedness. Even if our opinion isn't changed, we can still respect others' opinions and we can still talk to them. Those are all really important communication skills. And so our chapter will also talk about, rightfully, again, kind of leading into that, ways to handle conflict. And there are 5 different styles, and our chapter will kind of break down each of those different styles. And you may be able to see yourself in 1 or 2 of those and how you deal with conflict in your personal as well as professional life. Our chapter also talks about emotional intelligence, and this is knowing your own emotions. How do you react when you get upset or frustrated? And then can you manage those emotions? And then can you perceive the emotions of others? Can you read on someone's face how they're feeling? Can you pick up on the clues? So emotional intelligence is really important. As a couple slides ago talked about, nonverbal communication. Someone can communicate how they feel by their face, by their tone. And so being able to pick up on that is important so that you are having those open, respectful conversations. Teamwork and collaboration. This is the 5R approach to group work. This is kind of connected to something we talked about in a previous chapter. If you're having a difficult time with group work, this is the 5R approach that suggests, hey, first get to know your group members. Set some rules. We're going to arrive on time. You're going to arrive prepared. We're going to meet for 1 hour, whatever the rules are. Assign roles. So-and-so is the note taker. You're going to be the timekeeper. Get ready to work, which means, again, coming prepared, and then evaluate, address any issues, and monitor your progress as you work. Our chapter starts to wind up then with diversity and leadership. So this, again, kind of comes back to everything that's going on in our society. There's a lot of connections in this chapter to what's happening in our society now. Just being aware of different beliefs and attitudes and how we all come from different backgrounds, and having cultural competence is important. We live and work in a very diverse society. And so being respectful of those other beliefs and customs is really important in maintaining that work environment and just being kind to one another as people. Our chapter will also talk about stereotype threat. If you've never read about this before, or this is the first time you're hearing it, I think it's really interesting. I really encourage you to look at that. And then leadership skills. This is actually going to be the basis of your discussion post for this week. So here is what a transformational leader is, and our textbook says this is kind of like an ideal leader, someone who is very charismatic. They can motivate you. They also push you to think about different things, and they respect the people that they are leading. And that's kind of the qualities that a good leader embodies. And so that is chapter 4 of our actual content. So I'm going to go ahead and now get into the assignments that you're going to have associated with this. So as I said, your discussion is going to piggyback off of the last thing we talked about, leaders. So please remember, 250 words. Some of you are still only typing 3 sentences or something. So 250 words, if you need to put it in a Word document first, because Word document does a word count, type it in there, copy and paste it into your thread, whatever you need to do. Now, if you're only 1 or 2 words off, it's not a big deal. But if you're only typing 100 words, then that's why some of you might be seeing those points being taken off. All right. For your discussion, you're going to identify a leader. This could be nationally, so all the way up on the national scale, or down into our community. It could be at the state level, the national level, your city, or maybe someone in your church or your school, whoever. Think of a person who you feel is a leader. Why do you think they're a leader? What kind of qualities do they have? What kind of things do they do? Do you have any themes that are emerging when you think about them? Oh, you know what? Everything they do or say comes down to, how fair they are, or they're super organized, or they know how to delegate. Maybe there's a certain theme. And then what's one of their characteristics or behaviors that you think you could develop that you're they're a great public speaker and that bodes really well for their leadership. I need to work on this, and I can do that by and explaining what you could do. So that's your chapter 4 discussion. Remember, you'll go in there, you'll hit create thread, and then you'll either copy and paste or type it right there. Okay. So that's the discussion for chapter 4. And then you're doing that by Wednesday, July 1st for week 5 attendance. Respond to 2 classmates by Sunday at 11:55. All right, the next thing, because chapter 4 talked about a little bit of time management. So you're going to open up this document here, and it's going to open up into this right here. And this is a time management exercise. Now, I do encourage students, not as mandatory, but as just an exercise, do actually track your time sometime. Even if it's just for a couple of days. Some people like to do it for a week. Track how much time you actually spend on some of these. For our purposes, this is just an estimate. It's just an estimate how you spend your time for a 1 week period. So that's why you'll see, like times 7 and all of these. So look at all these obligated times, and I have in hopefully what can kind of capture everything. Classwork, so your studying, your homework, your discussion posts, all of that. How many hours a week you work, your travel between, wherever places you're going home, if you have to go to campus, if you're going to work. Regular appointments, so if you go to a certain meeting or an organization or a church or anything like that on a regular, not just like, I have a doctor appointment once every 6 months. Not that. Your meals, how much time you spend preparing and eating, your sleeping, your recreation, so time with friends and family, watching TV, relaxing, and then time traps. So I know 7 and 8 might go together, but there might be some things that you're like, yeah, this really is a time trap. So you'll put down, maybe you spend, 6 hours a day working, and then you times it by 7, or maybe you only work 5 days a week. In that case, times it by 5. Some of these may vary. And then you're going to add up how many hours you have in a week. There are only 168 hours in a week. So if you find that you have like 200 hours added up, something went wrong somewhere, which is why I put a little note up here. If you multitask, let's say you watch TV while you're eating, what task are you primarily doing? Don't count it twice. That's part 1. So that's the first part. Part 2 is answering these questions. Part 2 is answering these questions. Let me change that to 2. What activity takes up most of your waking day? So I'm not talking about sleeping. If we're lucky, that's what you do a lot of the week, is you sleep. So I'm talking about, oops, that was right, sorry. I'm talking about what you do during the day. Do you work the most? Do you work on classwork the most? Do you think it's a productive way to spend your time? Why or why not? What can you change to be more efficient with your time management? Or do you think you're doing a nice job already? And then did you learn anything about kind of taking a look at your time management? So, answer each of those, and maybe 1 or 2 sentences should probably wrap it up. And you can type it right in there, save it, and upload it. So again, there's 2 parts to this. Estimate your time, and then answer those questions that kind of reflect on your time use. And then you'll click in there, and there's a Dropbox for it right there. Okay. Our next thing is our Chapter 4 quiz. So you'll get that up and going, and you'll see, just like many of our other quizzes so far, there are 10 questions, and the directions are 2 to 5 sentences each response. And so you'll see there are a couple questions that are 2 parts, like number 1 and 2 are straightforward. Then a couple of them go into, make sure you answer both parts of it. This one I think is pretty straightforward. 3 and 4 only kind of set you up a little bit. So 2 to 5 sentence response for Chapter 4 quiz, and you're going to save it, upload it into this Dropbox here. All right, the last thing you are actually completing and submitting this week then is your Writing Center takeaway. So for the Writing Center, you are welcome to go to the Writing Center website, but I actually just have a video embedded in here from the coordinator of the Writing Center. You can see it's only about a little under 7 minutes. It's going to walk you through the Writing Center kind of information. Now, if you wanted to, you could go into, it's probably going to boot me out, sorry. You can go into My Stark State, or you can go into a Stark State homepage, and there is a Writing Center link. So you can get in there and you can kind of play around a little bit. There's another little video there. There's a little blurb that talks about it, where you can go to set up an online writing appointment, and here are some other resources. So I encourage you to look there. It also talks about like their normal hours. Again, I know we're not in a very normal semester, but there's their online writing hours. So that's what you're going to do for the Writing Center College Resource Reflection. You're going to watch that video, maybe explore their website a little bit, and then in a paragraph, again, please do not summarize. Do not summarize what the Writing Center does. I know what they do. I've worked at the college for quite some time now. I'm very aware of the Writing Center. how could you use them? Maybe you struggle with outlining, you struggle with revising, you struggle with getting a thesis clear, whatever the case is, or, have you used them before? What was the benefit of utilizing them? Or maybe you've used something similar in the past. So that's what the reflection is. A couple of you are still just giving me summaries of the resource minus actually telling me how you could use it. All right, so that about wraps it up. So for week 5, chapter 4, you're doing the time management, estimating your time and answering those questions, the discussion on what effective leaders do, 250 words by Wednesday, July 1st, chapter 4 quiz, and college resource reflection on the Writing Center. So all the assignments are due Sunday, July 5th. Remember to get your discussion post for week 5 attendance by Wednesday, July 1st. And then in a separate video, I will upload steps 3 and 4 so that you can continue to work toward that. Hope everyone has a great week. Bye.